Okay, hello again. This is now the Visual Tarot Part 5, and today I'm a little bit late, but I'd like to speak about the importance of knowing the starting point or knowing a starting point, because it makes a difference to what you say or what you might say in a reading. You need, I think, to know a starting point. And this idea came because I'd been watching this video on YouTube, an astrological video. At least it was supposed to be astrology. And what the person did was he was trying to explain how to read a horoscope. But the thing is, he took the sun was in the fifth house, which has a particular meaning, and Pluto by transit was coming up to conjunct the sun. And the person has Virgo rising, and there were two planets in the third house, and the south node was there, and the north node in the ninth house. So there are all these different factors. And what the so-called astrologer did was he talked about how the native, the querent, what was happening with Pluto and the sun was that she would had to produce something, and it could be a child. But so instead of waiting for everything to be perfect, it was already perfect because she's got Virgo rising, and it wasn't a child. It had to be something connected with, or it was more likely to be something connected with the third house, which is writing, and the ninth house, which is publishing. So his conclusion was she has to write a book, and has she started writing a book yet? And I'm listening to all this, and he's taking symbolism and apparently doing something with it and talking about it, and it's all supposedly astrological, but it didn't make sense. And then it was a Zoom kind of conference thing, and it went back to the woman whose chart it was, and she said, "Well, that was very interesting, and nobody's ever told me this before, and I don't know what the book would be about because it never occurred to me to write a book." And the astrology person said, "Well, you're supposed to." And the thing is, he didn't start at the beginning. With a horoscope, you start with the self of the individual, which is the ascendant, and then you understand what that is telling you about the kind of life that the person's meant to lead. And then you look at the value sense and so on. But he didn't. So it was all wrong, or it was all irrelevant. So it seems to me, if you're going to do a reading for somebody, it's important to know the starting point or a starting point. And how I like to do it at the moment is to get people to choose a couple of numbers, one between 1 and 9 and one between 0 and 22. And that gives me a couple of major trumps, which in some way give me an idea of or sum up what the person's going through and what kind of shape they're in at the moment. And then I talk about the background from those two numbers. And then in the light of the background, I would answer the questions. So what you can do instead or as well is pick a card at random. If the person's there in the room with you, okay, pick a card and it represents them. Rather than go with, blonde hair and blue eyes is the suit of batons. Because somebody can have blonde hair and dark eyes, so what do you do? So I think it's more useful to pick a card at random and see what you get. You don't need to tell the person about it, but it's useful for the reader to have an idea of the kind of person that you're dealing with. So let's say you shuffle and you pick a card and you get the sun card upright. You know that it's telling you something about the questioner. So maybe it's telling you they have confidence, they have optimism, they are looking on the bright side, they've got ideas and plans for the future because it's a sun card. Whereas with somebody else, let's say you pick a card and you get the Three of Swords reversed. You know the person is maybe defeated, or they've been through a bad time, or they're not optimistic, or they're pessimistic, or they're expecting the worst. Or they're thinking that they're not going to be able to handle whatever life gives them. So they're lacking confidence in that way. Or they're expecting they're going to be hurt. Or they're expecting that the pain is going to continue for a bit into the future. So you the reader, now have a starting point for answering the question and for making sense of the cards that come up, because you know the kind of person that you're dealing with, or you know what kind of shape the person is in at the time of asking the question or being given the answer. So we don't always have to give everything or explain everything about any particular card or about any particular method. So I'm thinking about it can be useful to deal with or to tell somebody about a SWOT analysis. And SWOT is SWOT, where what you do is you look at the situation. Let's say somebody wants a promotion. So you look at the S, which is the strengths that they will develop because of the promotion, or the strengths that they've got going into the interview. So S is strength, W is weakness. So you think about the question and the questioner, or the questioner thinks about their situation and figures out what the weaknesses are and can they do something about it. And depending on what the weaknesses are, what do we do about it? O represents opportunities. So what will it lead to, or what could happen because of, let's say, getting the promotion? And then T is threats. So you also, it means that if you go through SWOT, then you're in a stronger position to have a clearer picture or a clearer idea of what you're actually becoming involved in or what might happen. So a SWOT analysis can be a very useful suggestion that you give to the questioner, but you don't automatically do it every time because it's not always appropriate or not always relevant. But go back to the Sun card and the Three of Swords reversed. You're talking to the person who's represented by the Sun upright, you can talk about a SWOT analysis because it'll give them a better idea of what they're getting involved in and maybe help them identify where they're weak. Because if you're confident, you tend to assume that everything is going to be okay and you'll be able to handle it. But there can be a blind spot, or you can have ignored something or considered it unimportant. So you haven't really considered it, and maybe you ought to. And you can discover what that is if you do SWOT. But T is threats, and I'm thinking about the Three of Swords reversed person. Because if you've got somebody represented by the Three of Swords reversed and you talk about doing a SWOT analysis, you can imagine that all they'll think about is the threats. You want them to be aware of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, as well as threats. But if you're the Three of Swords reversed, you may be predisposed to look on the dark side. So when you hear about threats, that's all you think about. That's all you remember. That's all you pay attention to. And you don't take the strengths and the opportunities that seriously because you're represented by the Three of Swords reversed. So if you start with a significator that you choose at random, or that you choose based on the questioner picking the numbers, and work with what that shows, not what you're like. Because what I think happens is if you don't start with the beginning or a beginning, the reader ends up talking about himself or herself in the same way that the so-called astrologer, I think he wants to write a book, which is why when he saw these different factors, he put it together for what he would want. But it didn't make sense for the questioner because he didn't start at the beginning with the questioner. So if you choose a significator, you've got a starting point. And you work with what it shows. Whether you like it or whether it would suit you, that's irrelevant because it's about the questioner. It's not about you, the reader. So I'm suggesting before a reading, pick a card and see what you get. And in the light of the card that comes up, give the answer or talk about the cards that come up for the answer with reference to what's shown by the significator card. That was it for today. So I'll see you soon. Okay, thanks very much. Bye-bye.